Now that we're approaching a full week past the patch, we finally have everything that we need to know in order to give you guys the best performers on this patch. Let's not waste any time and get right down to the champions and the builds themselves. Make sure you smash that like button, destroy the sub button, and let's jump right in. Sprinting it down to mid lane faster than your 0-10 Yasuos ever could, Talon is leading the way as one of the best champions on this patch. He combines the incredible scary ability to kill you at level 2, 3, 4, and basically any point after that, with incredible roaming thanks to his E being able to hop over basically any wall in the game. On Talon, make sure you run Conqueror, it is the best rune on him by far, and supplement that with Triumph, Tenacity, Coup de Grace, Taste of Blood, and Ravenous Hunter, and double adaptive and MR or Armor depending on your lane matchup. And of course, as an incredibly offensive champion, make sure you grab Flash and Ignite. Having both of those really makes your kill potential so crazy that nobody can avoid you when you have them both up. In the item department, Talon is a little bit strange when you compare him to most other champions, but there aren't really that many AD assassins in the mid lane, and you might notice some patterns with them. For Talon, you want to rush a Tiamat, as it makes your wave clear really good, and your trades also definitely don't get hurt by buying that item. After that, getting a Moby Boots really quickly to help you roam and get back to lane faster is very important. Once you have those two key items to really set Talon up for success, you want to get as much damage as you possibly can by buying a Duskblade. And you can follow that up with a Black Cleaver for cooldown reduction, health, damage, and movement speed, all of which Talon wants. And the only thing left from there is a little bit of defense to make sure that if you get CC'd once, you don't just die instantly. Edge of Night is really good for this, as the spell shield can block some key abilities, and Death's Dance beyond that will keep you alive thanks to the bleed. Don't forget about the lifesteal effect from Death's Dance as well. Combine that with your Conqueror healing and you're set. The only thing left for you to buy is even more armor penetration, and that is exactly why Mortal Reminder is a great option. You can counter enemies' healing while also ignoring more of their armor, which is always a good thing when you're trying to kill them fast, especially if they have some pesky healers trying to help them or incredible lifesteal. And now that we've wrapped up one AD assassin, let's move on to the next. Pike is also doing insanely well in this patch, and just like Talon, he is an incredibly offensive champion who also has good sustain, which really annoys a lot of champions who like to play in the mid lane. Nothing like burning half of your total mana to see a Pike go away with half health and come back with 75%. Since Pike really only has one key offensive ability, you want to take Hail of Blades, as every single auto attack that you're going to get in each trade is going to be very important, and from there grab Cheap Shot for even more damage, Eyeball Collection for more snowball, and Ultimate Hunter. Need I say more? Pike has an execute that also has a reset for an ultimate. Why aren't you taking it on him? For secondary runes, I've seen a lot of people get baited into thinking precision is really important because Triumph seems so good. The extra gold and health has to be amazing, right? Well, it is, but not as good as taking Revitalize and Second Wind. You see, Pike doesn't need the extra money. Your ulti already makes you insanely rich. Instead, you should be focusing on trying to get through early laning with as much presence as you possibly can, and this usually means you're going to be going up against your laner 24/7 until you hit level 6. You want every single crumb of experience that you can get in the early game, so having more sustain is always a good thing. Don't forget to grab double adaptive and armor or MR depending on your matchup and your minor runes, and Flash Ignite of course, as a champion who just wants to keep on killing. For Pike's few first items, you might be noticing a little bit of a pattern here. You want to rush a Tiamat for that extra wave clear and Moby Boots for your roam power. Then you want as much damage as possible, which means a Duskblade is your best bet. But since you don't get to hop over walls 24/7 for free, you are going to want a Yumus after that, and then an Edge of Night. And since a second life on you is very valuable, and you want to stay alive for as long as possible, going Guardian Angel and then Death's Dance for your last items is very good. And now we come to Katarina, a champion who, when you know her limits, feels really strong at basically every point in the game. For runes on Katarina, they're kind of similar to Talon's. You're going to want to take Conqueror, Triumph, Tenacity, Coup de Grace, Sudden Impact instead of Taste of Blood, and Ravenous Hunter, with double adaptive and either armor or MR in your minor runes depending on your matchup of course. Thanks to Katarina's range, she doesn't have to actually take Taste of Blood to have a decent amount of sustain in lane because she has longer range and no mana costs. But it also really helps when the first item that you buy gives you an insane amount of sustain, as always, no matter what you're doing on Katarina, you want to rush a Gunblade. That item makes the champion exist on a godlike level. From there, considering that you are a hybrid scaling assassin who does mostly magic damage, you're going to want to grab yourself Sword Shoes. You need the penetration. and Oblivion Orb after that for even more. But notice how I said Oblivion Orb and not Morellonomicon. You almost never want to get Morellonomicon on Katarina because her R already has healing reduction built in. If you actually build Morellonomicon second on Katarina, you better keep an eye out on your mailbox because pretty soon you're gonna get a letter from both me and LS asking for your fines to be paid because that is illegal. Once you have the Oblivion Orb in the pocket, you're gonna want to rush yourself a Rabadon's because that just gives you the biggest spike in damage that you possibly can ever have. Then grab yourself a Zhonya's if you need it, but if you don't, Liandry's is an amazing item on Katarina as well. And then you can finish everything out by buying a Void Staff and then selling your Oblivion Orb if you haven't already for that Liandry's that we mentioned earlier or Zhonya's, whichever one you didn't pick up. And now that you've picked up what I'm putting down in the mid lane, let's jump up onto the top lane. First champion we're going to highlight here is Urgot, as this man has proven to be quite the champion on this patch. Ever since the buff to his R and the bug fix to his E, Urgot's been having a pretty good time in the top lane, but right now he's starting to take over. For runes on Urgot, make sure you grab Conqueror and then Triumph, Tenacity, Last Stand with Bone Plating and Overgrowth, and double adaptive and armor in your runes. You might think you want attack speed, but since Urgot's W eventually has no cooldown, you don't need it. And considering you're a champion that scales really well and really wants to get a lot of levels, make sure you take Flash and Teleport. Some aggressive top laners can get away with taking Ignite, and we do actually have one of those in our list here, but for Urgot, it's not really that great. You only have a really big kill power spike at level 6. As far as your items, they are pretty much rock solid right now. You want to get a Black Cleaver as your first item and defensive boots, Tabby or Merc Treads depending on the enemy team. Then Death Dance as your second item is absolutely key. From there, you just need to start getting beefy. Frozen Mallet as a third item is excellent and makes you essentially impossible to escape from. To really hammer home the tanky factor, then you can grab a Guardian Angel for armor and more damage with a second life, and then also Spirit Visage to up your incredible healing from both Conqueror and your Death Stance. But now that we've got Urgot out of the way, let's talk about a champion who could do pretty well into him. Poppy is a very good pick right now, and it's because she has a very good lane against a lot of the popular champions as well as the strong ones. Having really good damage, good defensive abilities, and the ability to stop dashes and other sorts of abilities like that makes her a very convincing pick when assassins are really popular in the mid lane and a lot of people are dashing, flashing, jumping, or whatever everywhere across the map. But that's not the only reason why you would pick her. You need to be able to do something in lane, and if you can't, well then you're just kinda only a W bot, and that sucks. But she can definitely get things done in lane. For runes, you want to grab Grasp, Shield Bash, Bone Plating, Revitalize, Biscuits, and Time Warp Tonic with double adaptive and armor or MR depending on your matchup in your minor runes. And of course, as a tanky champion who doesn't really need Ignite to kill people, you can grab Flash and Teleport. When you're playing a champion like Poppy who builds pretty much only defensive items, you have a little bit of a problem ahead of you, because sometimes it can be really tricky to build against both your lane and the people who you're going to fight in the enemy team. You can always swap around the order of the items in builds for tanks to make sure that you have the right things at the right points in the game. Rushing a Spectre's Cowl early against somebody like Teemo or some other magic damage dealer is really more important than you buying a Sunfire's first item. But for most cases, you're going to want to get Sunfire's as a first item, as Poppy has plenty of CC and always benefits from the burn damage as she has no problem sticking to her opponents. And of course, as usual, you're going to want to pick up Tabby or Merc Treads depending on the enemy team. Many times you're going to want Merc Treads as Poppy has a lot of key abilities that she needs to have good timing with. From there, Iceborne Gauntlet is a very strong item and really spikes your damage higher than you might think. The cooldown reduction combined with the mana for sustained laning as well as the Spellblade proc is very powerful. Then a Stone Plate makes you incredibly tanky and almost impossible to kill. If you still need more armor, you can then go a Thornmail or an Adaptive Helm after that if you need more magic resist, or even before it if you need it right now. But now we come to the last top laner, the one that I said was going to be taking Flash and Ignite and being very aggressive, and let's talk about Volibear. This man has been chewing his way through top laners left and right, even up to the very highest elos. That factor alone surprised me enough, but I was also even more surprised to see that there was actually quite a few different runes being taken. But one thing was very clear. If you're trying to absolutely demolish your lane and you're trying to solo carry very, very hard, you take Press the Attack. With Triumph, Tenacity, Last Stand, Second Wind, and Overgrowth, and attack speed, armor, and health in your minor runes. And of course, like I had said earlier, Flash and Ignite. You want to kill those people in your lane, every single chance that you get. Another thing that's important to point out is that Volibear is one of the few exceptions who take health in their minor runes rather than anything else. That's because his damage and his survivability both depend on his health. The items are where things really can be interesting too. If you notice that you're up against somebody who is a damage dealer, say like an Irelia or maybe even a Jax or a Quinn, you have the option of rushing a Titanic Hydra. This will give you a lot of health and still make you basically impossible to kill for your opponent, while also giving you ridiculous burst. Think about sprinting at your laner with your Q, flipping them over your head, using your Titanic for an auto attack, using your ultimate, hitting them one more time, and then biting their head off after you've procced your Q, your Titanic, your E, your W, your R, and your press the attack. If they're a squishy champion, they're dead. No question about it. But if you're against something more tanky that has a lot more survivability, you could just go Sunfires first instead, and then get yourself Merc Treads. Volibear needs to be able to move around, and even if Tabby's is very good, it is highly unlikely that the enemy team has no CC. But if they do, they are always an option. From there, you can get a Deadman's for the movement speed and survivability, and then a Wit's End, which is actually a hilarious item on Volibear. Once you get to that point, you really just need more ability to engage, so you can grab yourself a Righteous Glory and then round out your build with a Randomins. Just remember to have patience. You're already really fast thanks to your Deadman's and your Q, so you can run at somebody and get in range to slow them with your Randomins. Then if they flash away or say manage to get out because Thresh Lanterns them or whatever, you can then wait for your Q to come back off cooldown and then do that again with Righteous Glory rather than using your Randuins. Once you have options, you become much more deadly as the bear. And to find more cool tips about these sort of item combos and the patience that you need to make things work out in your favor all the time, make sure you go check out our website, GameLeap.com. You really just can't find the amount of videos that we have done by challenger level players on topics ranging from macro everything down to the very specific micro of each champion anywhere else. No matter what you're trying to improve on, there is something up there for you, and we're always working on making more and better content for you guys to keep giving you exactly what you need to keep on improving. And now that you've reached the stage of improvement squared, let's jump into the jungle and start talking about the stars of the show, the Bush Boys. Just kidding, I am absolutely 100% non-biased as a jungle player. The first jungler we're going to talk about is Fiddlesticks, as this man has risen from the absolute depths all the way up to the very top. You want to take Dark Harvest on Fiddlesticks with Sudden Impact, Zombie Ward, Ultimate Hunter, Nimbus Cloak, and Transcendence, with double adaptive and armor in your minor runes. Of course, don't forget you're going to be taking Flash Smite as a jungler, and the Flash is especially good on Fiddlesticks as you can really get into some amazing positions using both Flash and your ultimate. Literally every rune has some amazing synergy in some way with you, so make sure you take advantage of all of them individually. But for items, you're going to want to grab a Stalking Runic Echoes as your first jungle item pickup. Then grab Sword Shoes for the penetration and Zanya's. Zanya's is a no-brainer. You need to be able to go golden if the enemy team is trying to dive on top of you once you have your ultimate off. Beyond that, you might be tempted to get a Rabadon's, but you really don't have as much AP as you would like in order to make it worth it, and that's why Leandris is actually better here. Then you can go a Rabadon's and a Void Staff to finish everything out. The second jungler we're going to point out here is somebody who really came on the patch by surprise. Warwick has been doing really well lately. While the item build hasn't changed up too much from what it has been in the past, the runes do take a very clear different path. Instead of taking Press the Attack, you want Conqueror. Then grab yourself the Triumph, Alacrity, and Last Stand with Nimbus Cloak and Water Walking. No more Celerity, and that's because this build is different in a key way. You want to be in long fights, and so you're not just trying to get there really quickly using Celerity to speed up from your W. You want to stay in the fight after you've been in it, and that is exactly why you need the Nimbus Cloak movement speed to give you even more movement speed while you're in combat, not just outside. Of course, in case it wasn't clear, you also want to stay in long fights because you have Conqueror, and the item build is particularly good at fighting extended fights, because once you get somebody low, you're going to have a ton of attack speed to take advantage of. First, you want to get your Tiamat Rush. That is the absolute standard for Warwick. If you can get it, make sure you buy it. Then grab yourself a Skirmishing Cinderhulk. You don't need Blue Smite as you actually get enough movement speed from Nimbus Cloak alone. Then pick up your defensive boots, either Merc or Tabbies depending on the enemy team, and then get yourself the Titanic that you built the Tiamat for earlier. Then Spirit Visage as a next follow-up item is very powerful. You'll have your healing from your passive, from your ultimate, and your Conqueror to empower. Warwick is also a champion who really likes CDR, which is why you'll follow the Spirit Visage with an Iceborne Gauntlet for some juicy armor, mana that you might find you need in fights, and the 20% CDR of course. The Jhin passive is also really useful, and the slow is great too for keeping you in fights against your opponents. Lastly, Righteous Glory will give you your last 10% of CDR to hit that 40% mark and give you one more item to make sure you can get in the fight that you need to be in. And with that, we have wrapped up the Bush boys nice and neatly with a little bow tied on top, and now we can go down to the bot lane and give them the surprise inside the gift box that is a gank. The first AD carry we're going to highlight on this patch is Twitch. He is very strong right now, definitely deserving of the broken tier that we gave him on our tier list. You want to take lethal tempo on him with Triumph, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, Nimbus Cloak, and Gathering Storm with attack speed, adaptive, and armor in your minor runes. And of course, for summoner spells, Flash and Heal are pretty much standard for AD carries. Oh yeah, and don't worry, we're keeping an eye on that AD carries take exhaust thing, but there's nothing definitive on it yet. As far as Twitch's items though, these have been the same for just about as long as I can remember, at least a couple seasons. Blade of the Ruined King as a first item is amazing, as well as being followed up by Berserker Greaves. You are full offense. You're building for it. Then Renan's Hurricane has insane synergy with Twitch's R, and Infinity Edge for big crits just makes sense. Then Phantom Dancer gives you extra movement speed, attack speed, crit, and defense for what you need when you're in those fights, and Lord Dominix as a champion who is very squishy is very effective at chewing through tanks like it's nobody's business. Twitch has remained largely standard in this way for a long time now, just like I said earlier. But somebody else who has gotten some changes is Jhin. Now people are finally switching back to the Fleet Footwork Jhin. For a while there was Comet Jhin, there was Dark Harvest Jhin, there's been a lot of iteration on this man. But right now we are back to the high crit, high mobility Jhin of the past. Fleet Footwork is going to be your rune of choice, followed by Presence of Mind with Bloodline, Coup de Grace, Nimbus Cloak, and Gathering Storm, with double adaptive and armor in your minor runes. Like I said earlier, you're looking for the crit build here, but you're going to be rushing a Stormrazor, as the slow really helps you land your W, especially on low mobility targets, and getting that root off can really start a fight in your favor. From there, Swifties are the good old standard. You have a reason to buy them now since they've been buffed, especially so since Berserker Greaves doesn't really offer too much to Jhin. Then Infinity Edge for the crits and Rapid Fire for the range are standard second and third items, and Phantom Dancer will give you exactly what you need in a defensive shield and the ability to move around the map quicker. Then Guardian Angel as a last item keeps you safe against those pesky AD assassins who keep trying to dive you, and if you really needed to, you could swap the GA out for a Death Dance, but you already have Bloodline for lifesteal. So if you really have shields and some other assistance coming from your team, Death Dance might be a better option, but most of the time, GA will be your best bet. And the last AD carry that we're going to highlight now is somebody who is actually leading the way in the super high late game DPS race. Ashe is very good right now, and you're going to want to take Lethal Tempo, Presence of Mind, Alacrity, Coup de Grace, Magical Footwear, and Approach Velocity with attack speed, adaptive, and armor in your minor runes. It is also important to note that taking Cut Down on Ashe is also very good if the enemy has a lot of tanks. You're not building none of that 40% CDR rush anymore. Instead, you are going Blade of the Ruined King first item, followed by Berserker Greaves. Then you pick up that Renan's Hurricane, the Infinity Edge to make your slows even more potent, as well as the ones on the extra targets from your Runons, and then a Phantom Dancer for the movement speed, the kiting ability, the shielding, and everything that juicy item gives you. And then much like Jhin, your last item should be a GA, unless you really want some super lifesteal, in which case you go Death Stance. You'll notice that most of the time, you don't need to use your Blade of the Ruined King to chase your opponents thanks to your slow and your approach velocity, so make sure you save that for when you need to kite people away from you. You'd be surprised how fast an Ashe can be when she steals movement speed from somebody who just procced Phase Rush or something like that. But now that the AD carries are assembled, let's talk about their support companions in the bottom lane. The first support we're going to highlight here is Janna. She has been the front runner on the patch across all elos now. She is doing very well, and she is taking a rune which you might not expect. She takes Comet. Many people would think that you would just default to Aerie, because she has both offensive abilities and defensive ones in her shield and her R healing. However, any of Janna's offensive abilities will automatically cause Comet to hit. This is why you take it in the early game, because it's just so easy to get the damage off. Then you could follow that up with a Mana Flow, Transcendence, Scorch, Taste of Blood, and Relentless Hunter. You're trying to move fast, you're trying to hit people often, and you're also trying to stay healthy. Because you're so aggressive, you actually take Flash Ignite. You usually don't want to take Exhaust unless you really need it because there's some really big threat on the enemy team. For items, you want to get Spell Thieves. You're constantly hitting people and you're constantly gonna generate gold. From there, Moby Boots for the speed makes you absolutely irritating to both catch and run away from. And since you're never really playing passively, Athene's is an amazing buy. You'll constantly be able to heal people up with your R and your E even more than you normally could, thanks to the amount of damage and the way that the item will interact to all your harass. Then an Ardent Sensor is just a standard item. You have a big AoE heal and a shield that can really help an AD carry do amazing DPS. After that, Redemption will give you another option to proc your Ardent and up your healing and shielding power, as well as a Shirelia's for movement speed for disengage or engage depending on what you need. All this will also give you 40% CDR, which is amazing, and that Transcendence will also give you a little bit more damage too. With Janna out of the way, let's talk now about the other Enchanter support that we're going to talk about here in our highlights. Sona has also been doing really well. She plays a similar role to Janna in the sense that she likes to play aggressive and constantly hit people with her Qs as well as poke them. And since she doesn't have the luxury of having 2 offensive abilities that CC people and guarantee the landing of Comet, Sona instead takes Airy, and then Mana Flow with Transcendence and Scorch just the same as Janna, but in the secondary tree, you go Presence of Mind and Cut Down with double adaptive and armor in your minor runes. Cut Down is really effective on Sona because she already has such a low base health amount that she will likely be proccing that in the early game against many other supports, and as the game goes on, she doesn't really build that much health to begin with anyways, so you'll still be hitting that on most people in the game. Presence of Mind is also really important for mana as Sona chugs through mana super fast. Maybe not as fast as our next champion, but still, really fast. For items on Sona, you're going to want to get a Spell Thieves much like Janna, and then an Athene's as well. From there, you can go Lucidity Boots for cooldown reduction and Ardent Sensor after that with a Redemption. And then this is where things start to take a turn. You can pull up a Rabadon so that you really start empowering your healing, your damage, and your movement speed as well as your ultimate, as they all scale really well with AP. If you feel like you don't really want to sit on a needlessly large rod for a long period of time though, you can instead go for a Lichbane and sit on the Aether Wisp for the movement speed that it gives you. And now we've made it to the last support, the man who I said chugs mana like crazy. Tariq is our final champion that we're gonna go over in this video. He takes Guardian with Shield Bash, Conditioning, Revitalize, Presence of Mind, and Legend Tenacity with the CDR rune, MR, and Armor, whatever your lane really needs in the minor runes. Honestly, you could take literally anything in your runes as long as you have Presence of Mind. You will not be immediately losing on Tariq. If you don't have Presence of Mind, you are going to notice that you will have no mana always. Despite the defensive nature of Tariq, he actually does a surprising amount of damage if you're playing him correctly, and that's why you still take Flash Ignite a lot of the time. You want to play aggressive and beat people's heads in with your special hammer. And you'll notice that a lot of the items in your build do give you damage in one way or another. To start off, Relic Shield is amazing. It gives you health, AP, everything that Tariq wants as a support item. Then grab your Merc Treads. It doesn't matter if the enemy team is full AD. Unless they have no CC, you need to grab a Merc Treads because your main purpose is to get your ultimate off and live so that you can be invincible and provide super value to your team. From there, grab a Zeke's to start slowing people in a snowstorm and lighting people on fire with your AD carries auto attacks. And then you can get a Redemption for AoE healing to really make your team absolutely dominant in all team fights. After that, you can pick up a Knight's Vow to keep somebody on your team safe and reduce the amount of damage that they're taking, as well as give yourself some more CDR and armor. And then lastly, you can get an Ardent Sensor to have insane value as you heal throughout the fight and give everybody on your team bonus attack speed and bonus damage. And with that, we have finally come to the end of the video and covered the top 3 champions in each role on this patch. To find more information on a lot of the champions that we've covered in this video and more information on how to improve and win your games in League, make sure you go check out our website, GameLeap.com. Really guys, if you aren't going there, what are you doing? It's the best place for you to get the best content in order to learn and win. We have tons of videos all done by challenger level players in order to give you guys exactly what you need to improve, whether it be on macro, on micro on a specific champion, something in a specific lane, something in the jungle. No matter what you're looking for, there is something up there for you. But if for some reason there is one topic that we have missed and you notice it, make sure you let us know. We're always working on more and better content with our creators so that we can keep giving you guys exactly what you need. And if you made it this far, thanks for watching the whole video. what do you guys think of this patch's highlights? All of these champions are really strong right now, and you should definitely take advantage of them if you can. Some of them really surprised me, like Volibear and Warwick, and even Urgot being a top performer came at a surprise. But anyways, as always, my name is Ace Windstorm, and I will see you all later.